من لساني يفقه قولي. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Inshallah, in today's talk, in reference to the lives of the Sahaba, inshallah, we'll talk about a subject which is related to how some of the Sahaba enter into fold of Islam. And as I discussed that last week, that we talked about the circumstances and the situation of society in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he was appointed as the messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we can comprehend and understand how Islam came and changed the lives of the people. So it is important for us to remember the circumstances. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sent as a messenger. So we also understand the state or the status of the society at that time as well. So inshallah, when we talk about these Sahaba, the way they enter into fold of Islam, that will motivate us and remind us that the way the change came in the past, it is inevitable again, because the same Islam that was revealed to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is preserved, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself took the responsibility to protect the deen of Islam. So as far as the message that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam brought, that message is preserved. Hence the same change can come because we are same human beings, the way we are human beings like the people were in the past. As far as that part goes, it has not changed. The reality is same from the perspective of the human being, and now there's a message that is out there, which is message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And before I go into the subject of some of the stories of the Sahaba, so we can learn some lessons from those stories, I'd like to remind that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has repeatedly mentioned in the Quran, whenever it comes to the subject of the Iman, the subject of the Aqidah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding us that there are signs for the people who think. There are signs for the people who ponder. There are signs for the people who do reasoning. As Allah Azza wa Jal says in Surah Al-Imran, إِنَّ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ لَآيَاتٍ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. That verily in the creation of the heavens and the earth and the changes of the days and the nights, there are signs for the people of understanding. Similarly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and some of the verses that I am intentionally reciting, that we can relate, because we hear these verses all the time. Either we are reciting or we come to the salah. Like many a time when we go to Salat al-Jum'ah, many of the imams, they are reciting Surah Ghashiyah because of the ahadith that talk about Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He used to recite Surah Ghashiyah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says there, أَفَلَا يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَى الْإِبْلِ كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ وَإِلَى السَّمَاءِ كَيْفَ رُفِعَتْ وَإِلَى الْجِبَالِ كَيْفَ نُصِبَتْ وَإِلَى الْأَرْضِ كَيْفَ سُطِحَتْ. So here Allah Azza wa Jal is asking us, telling us, even though the word "move" is never here, يَنْظُرُونَ, but here it means don't you ponder, don't you reason, don't you think about this. How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created the camel, how Allah has created, raised the heaven, how Allah has spread the earth, how Allah has installed mountains. All these verses are making us think, and there are hundreds of ayat in the Quran that are addressing the subject of Iman, subject of Aqidah. As a matter of fact, the scholars of the Quran, when they talk about how the Quran is divided, one of the ways of dividing the Quran is by subject. And they divide the Quran by three subjects. One is related to the Iman or the Aqidah. Other part is in regards to the Ahkam. or the rule Allah has commanded us, whether it is Allah is asking us to do something or Allah has permitted us to do something. And the third part is about the stories Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned. So we can learn lessons. And one of the reasons we are talking about the stories of Sahaba is so we learn the lessons. And as a matter of fact, whether the stories which are mentioned in the Quran, which are factual for us because it is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the stories that come later on, the things that we can get out of it is the ibrah, is the lesson. Even when we talk about Sahaba, we don't extract rules from that, and that can be from daily lives as well. We go back and forth, we do things, we see things are happening around us. We hear, for example, I don't know, I'm too old, but I just saw the news, one of the Maid of Honor, she passed away yesterday. And I was listening to her interview because of the news is out there. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant her Jannah. She mentioned something very interesting. And that really made me think in relation to the talk I was preparing. She said, for the people today, the most dangerous thing about a believer is he's carrying the haqq and he does not care about, he has nothing to lose in the sense of you can take whatever you want from him. If he has pleased Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's all that matters. And that is the most dangerous aspect. And that was the thing that we find in reality in the lives of the Sahaba. When I'm saying have nothing to lose, is because this dunya, that we are going to lose anyways. So the main thing that our focus should be is the akhirah. Even though the Islam came down so we can regulate the life in this dunya according to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So let's not be thinking this way. When we talk about our focus is akhirah, it means we don't live in this dunya. No, we live in this dunya. Because living is in this dunya is the one that can result into, inshallah, for us to enter into Jannah if we abide by the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the individual level and also on the societal level. Because Islam came to eradicate all sorts of worships except worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when we say worshiping Allah, it means that all our actions, whether they are our spiritual actions, whether they are social actions, whether they are economical actions, judicial ruling, whatsoever kind of action they want to take, as small as when we enter into the bathroom, we know that we enter with the left foot and when we exit from the right foot. And then talking about how we eat, how we dress, how we communicate with each other, the relationship between the parents and the children, children and the parents, with the neighbors, on the level of a country or the world, because Muslim Islam came, so the rule of Allah Azza wa Jal will be supreme. And that is the goal that we should always be focused with, no matter what aspect of Islam we are studying. So when we talk about Aqidah is such an important subject that the ulama refer to the knowledge about Aqidah as Ra'sul Ilm, Ra'sul Ulum, that it is the head of the knowledges, all sorts of knowledge. Because everything in Islam rests on the Aqidah, rests on the Iman. And hence we see when these Sahaba, Ridwanullah alayhim, when they entered into the fold of Islam, you see a comprehensive change in their lives. So when we look at their lives, we will inshallah see some of the examples now. So remember that their life was transformed because of their correct understanding of the Aqidah. Aqidah came with not only the spirituality, but it came with a comprehensive way of life. How to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how to deal with our actions with other people, and how to deal with ourselves. All these actions have to be regulated by the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the, and by the way, there are many of the stories of the different Sahaba, various Sahaba. In next couple of weeks, we will talk about even just how they enter into the fold of Islam. because it is such an important subject, it cannot be covered in one day. So I will cover some of them, and some of the Sahaba stories, we have it in detail, others we don't have in detail. But whatsoever we have, inshallah, we'll get the most out of it. So one of the famous stories is the story of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, how he entered into the fold of Islam. But before I talk about that, as I talked about the society at large in the time of Rasulullah when he was appointed as a prophet, it's good to know how Umar was before he came to Islam. So then we will really appreciate the change that happened because of Islam. In the days of Jahiliyyah, so Umar, even though when he was young, he had a very harsh childhood. From his father, he used to beat him up because of he would not fulfill, if he asked him to do a task and he does not do the way he wanted, he would get beatings. Or he would work so very hard to just take care of the camels of Khattab, his father. And he would give him the small, some sort of ujra, some sort of, what's the word for ujra in English? Recompensement. And one of the stories, Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anh, he mentions about it during the days of his Khilafah. He's talking about what kind of a harsh, difficult life he had. So one time, he was thinking about his Khilafah, that how big of a ruler he is. To a point, he was thinking that between Allah and the world, he is the one, because he is the most powerful one among all the people. When this thought came to his mind that he is a ruler over such a vast land, he went to the masjid. He got on the minbar and he said that there was a time that I used to take care of my maternal aunt's camels. At the end of the day, she would give me a handful of dates and raisins that would suffice me for the day. And he got off the minbar. Abdurrahman bin Auf radiallahu anh, he went to Umar and he said, what did you just do? You degraded yourselves. You are Amir al-Mu'mineen. And Umar, this thought came, and I had to kill this thought that I am such a big thing, that I am a ruler over such a vast land, even though he was a just ruler. He was a just ruler who was meant Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we remember him as one of the Khulafa Rashidin, rightly guided Khalifa. Even him, he's thinking about that the arrogance came to his mind, pride came to his mind that has to be killed. But that's talking about the rough life he had during the Jahiliyyah in his childhood. Then he mentions about Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anh, that he was one of those people, even at a young age, among the Arabs were not many of them were literate, but he was the one who learned how to read and write. And he became eloquent in the language of the Arabic. So this was an edge he had. And later on, when he grew older, he started participating in the trade, and he made some fortune. So he made some money. It's not that before he became Khalifa, he was not a rich person, or before he became Muslim, he was not. He had good fortune at that time. We're talking about his childhood. And then, but Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anh, one thing about him was, he was the person who would defend all his traditions, acts of worship. They were worshiping idols, he was engaged in that. And he would worship and he would defend the people who were doing that. So when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when he was appointed as a messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, now for him, like the other mushrikeen, for him Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam was a threat to their way of living. And I'm using the word way of living rather than saying the worship only, because that's what it meant. As we talked in the last lecture, in the Jahiliyyah society, there were many religions existed besides idol worshipping, but they did not have issue with that. But when Islam came, for them, they really sensed it, that no, this is not like any other religion. This is a way of life that is here, and that could be dangerous for them, because now he is referring to only one word Allah can be worshipped. There's only one ilah. And that means their way of living, including one of the ways, the status the Quraysh and the Meccans had because of the Kaaba was in danger. In danger now. Now, the people who come from all across the Arabian Peninsula for this Hajj and all those things, they were in danger. So Umar was harsh against anyone who was entering into the fold of Islam until he became Muslim. To a point, there was a female slave he had. Because she became a Muslim, he started beating her up until the whip he was carrying, it fell off his hand. Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu passed by, and he saw what Umar was doing. And as Abu Bakr was famous about that he was freeing up many of those slaves who accepted Islam, and they were going through difficult times from their masters. And he freed them. Then after that, so he goes on about Umar's life, how he exposed to Islam. Before we talk about exposing to Islam, there was a soft spot that was sensed by Abdullah bint Hantama. So she was migrating to Habasha, and Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu passed by her, and he saw her, and he asked her what was she up to. And her response was, because you guys are not allowing us to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, hence we are leaving this land, the land of Shirk. And they were going to Habasha. And Umar radiallahu anhu, even though he was a mushrik at that time, his response to her was surprising for Abdullah. He says, Sahabakum Allah, may Allah accompany you, may Allah protect you, may Allah be with you. And she felt this softness from Umar towards Islam. So when Abu Abdullah came, and Abdullah told him that Umar said this. Now, his response to her was, it feels like you think Umar is getting soft towards Islam. And her statement that always I remember, and it's kind of make me laugh. He said, لا يسلم حتى يسلم حمار الخطاب. That he said, he will not become Muslim until the donkey of Al-Khattab will become Muslim, or accept, or submit. Subhanallah. This was the way they used to think about Umar bin Khattab before Islam. That this is the kind of a person he was, that he will not enter into the fold of Islam because he's so hard-headed, so harsh, so stubborn, that he will not enter the fold of Islam. And we know the story of Umar bin Khattab later on, of course. So the reason I am bringing this up is by no means to show or to degrade Umar bin Khattab by any means. It is for our own sake. So we understand that the change can happen to anyone. Change can happen. It's up to us. Do we want to make a change in ourselves or not? And change starts from within ourselves, of course. And then there are stories mentioned about Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu, which is there's not much authenticity about that, so I'm not going to quote all those stories, because there were some other stories about Umar as well, that what softened him towards Islam as well. But one day, the Quraysh were discussing the matter of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and as we can see, and it is important to understand the circumstances, what time we were talking about, as Umar had already just talked to Abdullah, who was going to Habasha. It means that Sahabah had already migrated to Habasha when he was still not a Muslim. So the Muslims were going through very difficult times. This is the time that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was commanded to proclaim Islam openly. And when he started doing that, Sahaba and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they had to go through very difficult times. And when we say he was openly calling for Islam and privately calling for Islam, the distinction is the openly call was getting towards changing the society. The call was towards now what the verses were revealed, where we're talking about changing the society according to the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the beginning, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was going to the people individually, yes, but even he called his family members. He got onto the mountain, he called them up, and he even called them up for food and all those things. But that's not considered as calling them openly. Calling them openly is connected to that this is now a tussle between the society and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the message that he brought. So now the message was in the phase of changing the society for the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hence, the kuffar of the Makkah, they become harsher and harsher. And we see the Quraysh, they were discussing about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they discussed and they said, okay, who will kill Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? This is what they started talking about. And Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh, he said he will do it. Now Umar bin Khattab, he had a sword on his side hanging in the midday, and he found out Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is in Darul Arqam. Darul Arqam, one of the kids I know here named Arqam, mashallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve him. So he was heading towards Darul Arqam. Why? Because this is the place Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to gather the Sahaba to teach them about Islam, whether it's the Quran or whatever wahi was revealed to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. See what I said, Quran and whatever wahi was revealed, because I want to stress that point. The wahi is not only Quran, but the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is also part of the wahi. So whatever Islam was revealed that Rasulullah was teaching to Sahaba in Darul Arqam. He was on his way, and while on his way, he ran into one of his relatives, Nu'aym radiallahu anh, who became a Muslim already, and Umar was not aware that he was a Muslim. So Nu'aym asked him, what are you up to, Ya Umar? And Umar's response was, today I am going to uproot Islam. I'm going to kill Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So now Nu'aym, he wanted to divert Umar. So he started saying, do you really think that Banu Abdul Manaf will let you off the hook? And Banu Adi, they will let them just off the hook, that you go kill Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? As we talked about last week, when we talked about Jahiliyyah society, no matter what kind of a relationship they have with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when it comes to tribalism, they would protect the tribe. If a member of their tribe been killed, they will take care of the person who has done an action. Hence, Nu'aym was reminding him about this. And Umar was very determined, no, he's going to kill Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is the way Umar bin Khattab was. So now when Nu'aym realized that he cannot divert Umar from the path he is on, so he said, why don't you go check your own family? Some members of your family have become Muslim. And Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh said, who is this? Who's the one who became Muslim? So now he named his sister and cousin's name, Fatima radiallahu anha, Fatima bin Khattab, and Sa'id bin Zayd radiallahu anhu, who was the husband of Fatima and also the cousin of Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu. So now instead of going towards Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he changed his path to his sister's house. When he went there, he heard they're talking about something. And it happened to be Khubbab bin al-Arab. He was there to teach Quran to Fatima and Sa'id bin Zayd radiallahu anhu. So he knocked at the door. When he knocked at the door, they stopped reading. And Fatima, she hid the parchment of the Quran she had under her leg. And Khubbab, he hid in the house. Umar entered and he started inquiring about if they have become Muslim. And first he asked, what were they talking about? They said we were just talking among ourselves. And then he said, I heard that you have changed your religion. And Sa'id bin Zayd radiallahu anh, he said, what if your religion is wrong? What if your path that you are on, your deen that you are on is wrong? Are you going to continue to follow the path that you're on? And he got angry for this, and he grabbed Sa'id with his beard, and he started wrestling, and he sat on the chest of Sa'id bin Zayd. Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu was a strong man. Let's not forget that. He was not just tough by the talk. He was really a tall, tough man. There's a story about his height some other time. We'll talk about that, inshallah. But he was a big man. And he's sitting on the chest of his cousin and brother-in-law. And we know how relationships normally are with the brother-in-laws. So he's sitting on the brother-in-law's chest. And now the sister, Fatima bint Khattab, she's the bint Khattab also. She goes towards Umar and she says, yes, and she said the Shahadatain, that she has become a Muslimah. And she said, La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah. And then upon that, Umar hit his sister. When he hit his sister, her face started bleeding. And for that, when he saw that, and her response was, do whatever you want, we are not going to leave this deen. On that, Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu, when he saw his own sister's face is bleeding, he calmed down and he asked, show me what you were reading. And for that, subhanAllah, even in this anger and all that is going on, her sister's response is, you're not clean. You're not clean. You cannot touch this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's not touched by except the ones who are tahir. Now, that's a issue about what does it mean by tahir here. Is it the angels, or is talking about the person who is in a state of ablution or not? That's not the discussion here. But the point here is, she made him calm down, asked him to wash up. And once he washed up, she showed him the parchment that they were reciting, which is Surah Taha. And he started reading Taha ma anzalna alayka al-Quran litashqa illa tadhkiratun liman yakhsha, and continued on, Allah la ilaha illa huwa lahu al-asmaul husna, until then. And he continued to read on and on. And when he got to the point where it says, Innani ana Allahu la ilaha illa ana fa'budni wa aqim as-salata li dhikri. When he got to this point and continues Surah Taha, his response was, the one who says this, these words are from, there is nobody worthy of worship but him. Right away, that clicked in his heart, because remember that this Quran itself is a miraculous word of Allah Azza wa Jal. This is a miracle that still exists. All the messengers came with the miracles, and those miracles went away with them. When it came to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he had many miracles, but his biggest miracle was the Quran. And the Quran was the miracle in the language. The miracle was in the language. Because it is in the language, the Arabs, who were the only thing that they really are very proud of, was their language at that time. So that anyone who listened to the Quran at that time, it hit them. They really realized that, no, this cannot be the word of a human being. This cannot be the word of anything that they have ever heard. Hence, Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu, right away, he said, nothing should be worshipped except the one whose kalam is this. And now, Khabbab bin Arad, who was hiding, scared of Umar bin Khattab's anger, he comes out. And he says that he gives him the glad tidings, be of a good cheer, of Umar, but I hope that this is the answer of the dua of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So Khabbab says he heard Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam making the dua, Allahumma aiz al-Islam bi-ahabbi hadain al-rajulain. That, oh Allah, give the power, the honor Islam through the most beloved of you between these two. هذان الرجلين إليك بأبي جهل أو بعمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه. And as it is said, the أحبهما إليه عمر. Of course, the Umar was the more beloved to Allah Azza wa Jal. And this is what Khubbab was telling him, that he gave him the glad tidings, that maybe this is the dua of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that is accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you are responding to that dua. Now Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu, he was told where Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was. He headed towards the door. Now he knocks at the door. Sahabah inside with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, they find out it's Umar. Nobody wants to open the door. Remember that Umar is a tough guy. But there was another thing that happened 3 days prior to the acceptance of Umar bin Khattab's Islam. And that was Hamza radiallahu an, the uncle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he also became Muslim. He was in there too. So he said, open the door, don't worry about him. We are enough. If he is here with a bad intention, we'll kill him. This is how Hamza radiallahu an was. And if he's with a good intention, let him in. He came. So now how did he come? Sahabah went there. They grabbed him from both sides, both arms. And they held him and they grabbed him and took him to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told them, leave him alone. And then Rasulullah grabbed him with his lower garment and upper garment. Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to him, what brings you, O Umar, son of Khattab? By Allah, I don't think you are going to stop until Allah sends down calamity upon you. And Umar said, O Messenger of Allah, I have come believing in Allah and His Messenger. Subhanallah. A person who was on his way to kill Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he listens to the Quran, and that changed everything for him. Now the very same person, he became the protector of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he told Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ya Rasulullah, aren't we on the haqq? Then why are we here? Why don't we go and proclaim in front of the people, go openly like this and announce it in the Kaaba also? And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he made 2 rows of the Sahaba, one led by Hamza, other led by Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu, and they made the tawaf of the Kaaba. They were going openly already. Now they were able to show that they worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they were even able to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in open after acceptance of Umar bin Khattab's Islam. Now, after that, Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu, the one who used to harm the Sahaba who became Muslim, at this point, he wanted to taste that hardship the Sahaba used to taste. Now, he headed towards Abu Jahl's house. Abu Jahl, who was the uncle, maternal uncle of Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu. He entered there, he knocked at the door, asked, who was it? It's Umar bin Khattab. Okay, it's Umar bin Khattab. What do you want? He said, I became a Muslim. And Abu Jahl said, don't do that. He said, no, I become a Muslim. He said, don't do that. Well, it goes on back and forth 2, 3 times. Abu Jahl slams the door on his face and leaves. Umar said, that's nothing. He just slammed the door on my face. He went to another leader of the Quraysh. And he's telling him also the same thing. Now, one person sees that Umar is going door to door announcing that he became Muslim. So one of the person came to Umar bin Khattab and he told him, it seems like you want people to know that you have accepted Islam. So he said, there's a person sitting there, his name was Jamil. If you go and tell him, he will tell the rest of the Quraysh, of the Meccans, that Umar has become Muslim. So when the people used to gather around the Hijr, at that time, Umar went to Jamil and he said to him, he became Muslim. Jamil did not even ask anything else. He just ran towards the Haram and started screaming from the top of his lung that Umar has become a Sahabi. Umar has left the idol worshipping. Sahabi, they used to use the term. Umar said, no, I did not become a Sahabi, I became a Muslim. And Umar is correcting him. Now the people who are gathered there, they all gather, they start beating him up. And Umar is fighting back with them, they're beating and Umar is beating them. And that continued on until As bin Wa'il, he came and he was one of the leaders of the Mecca. He came, he's the one protected Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu, and they let him go at that time. Now, the point to remember here, and by the way, when Umar bin Khattab became Muslim and he came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave him a title at that time, and that title was Al-Faruq. Al-Faruq means the one who is the distinguisher between the haqq and the batil. When Umar came, that became very clear, and the Muslims were able to go in public, and not only were able to worship now, that's different that they were still being harmed, the weak ones, but there were some of them that started beating them back also. not getting harm only, but they start beating. As Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anh, he beat him back when they were beating Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anh. This is some of the reports that talk about Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anh. And Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu anh said, we felt a sense of pride when Umar became a Muslim. For we could not circumambulate the Kaaba, we could not do tawaf the Kaaba and pray until Umar became Muslim. When he became Muslim, he fought them until they left us alone. Subhanallah. A person like Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu and Hamza, when they entered the fold of Islam, how it gave the strength, even though the number-wise they were still very small. And another aspect to remember here, Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu, when he became Muslim and his Islam is followed by actions right away. It was not like that today. A lot of us think of it, even though we are born Muslims, but we always think of it, oh, I have to study so much first before I start acting according to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or we come up with all sorts of excuses not to follow what Allah has commanded, while we see in the lives of Sahabah that they enter into the fold of Islam and right away we see the action is there. It's not like Umar ibn Khattab became a Hafiz al-Quran the moment he became a Muslim. It's not he got a degree from Al-Azhar. It's not like he became a Mufti or he became a Mujtahid. He has just entered into the fold of Islam. This La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, when it is taken the way it's supposed to be taken, it's a very powerful idea. Because then you really feel, or you know, that because if you do what Allah has commanded you, that Allah is on your side. Allah is on your side. That's what can be more powerful for anyone than to have Allah Azza wa Jalla on his side. You can have the whole world against you, but if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is on your side, you are the most powerful person on the earth. And if the whole world is against you, but Allah Azza wa Jalla is with you, then, if the whole world is with you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is against you, then you are the weakest person, no matter what you think of yourself. So this shahadatain that we talk about, this is what it gives. This is what it gave to the Sahaba. That's what we see in the line of Sahaba that elevated them to the level, even though a person like Umar bin Khattab in the days of Jahiliyyah, he was on his way to kill Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and in the same scene that we see, he becomes Al-Faruq radiallahu anhu. The thing that made him Al-Faruq was the Iman and the Aqidah he was carrying, which is resulting into action also. And to understand that this Iman or this Aqidah that we are carrying, that is from Allah, the believing in Allah Azza wa Jal, that He gives us a comprehensive way of life. Let's not take this Aqidah in the manner that it is like everybody else worships something, so we worship another God. This is not the way Islam is. Islam is a way of life that provides us every detail of our life, what to do. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, that we have revealed this book on you that explains everything. When we say this book, the Kitab Allah, the very same Kitab Allah commands us to follow the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when we look at that comprehensively, we see that how Islam changes life. And that has to be taken from this perspective that when we are taking Islam, we're taking Islam from the perspective of this comprehensive way of life and this book that Allah has revealed to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that gives all the answers. And we have to read the book from that angle as well. I'll give you a quick story from yesterday actually, and then inshallah I had 4 or 5 different stories to talk about, but it seems like we don't have time. But I'll give you a story of my own yesterday, what happened, so we can relate inshallah. Okay? One of my neighbors, Abu Haytham, he asked me that he needed a ride to pick up rental car. He told me, okay, yes, to go. He gave me the name of the company. I'm not gonna talk about the name of the company here, but anyway, so he told me it's on 119th. And I go there all the time. My mom lives there, and it's not too far from my place. What is he talking about? Really? I mean, because I pass by all the time there, but that rental company exists there. Okay? He told me, I said, fine, whatever you say, I'll follow you. So I'm following. Actually, I was driving with him, and he took him there, and really, it is right there on 119 and Route 59. My sons are here. They also drive by. They probably don't even know there's a car rental there. But anyways, and maybe others also. So the point, what I realize here is that I was able to find this company now. And as a matter of fact, now I pass by, I remember, oh, there's a car rental company there. Same thing happens to the Quran. If we take the Quran from the perspective of that this is the book, and not perspective, Allah says that. Yeah? It explains everything. So if we read the Quran from that angle, no matter what issue we are going through in our lives, that it gives me the answers. Then we will find the answers. Whether it's in the Quran or the Sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we will find the answers. But we have to read the book from the angle that this gives me the solutions for everything. But if we don't, then it will become like car rental. We will read through the books, the book of the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If we think, oh, Quran and Sunnah came for only my salah, zakah, hajj, and my fasting and my akhlaq, and that's it, then these are the only things we will find. But if we read it from the angle, no, yes, it came for all this, but it came. So this way of life Allah has given that will prevail over all other ways of life. That's why this book, the deen was given to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The message of Islam was brought here. So this way of life, the supreme way of life, because it is from the creator of the heavens and the earth. It's not because an Arab or a Desi or Egyptian or an African American or white lives by this lifestyle, hence it is better than others. No. It is the best lifestyle because it is from the creator of the heavens and the earth. And once we take it from the angle, then we will be able to see the sweetness of this Iman and the Aqidah, and then we will see our own role on the earth that Allah has sent us with. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned it very clearly at the creation of the Adam alayhi salatu wasalam. وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about at the time of the creation of the mankind, that Adam is created as the Khalifa on the earth. What does the Khalifa do? He is the viceroy of Allah Azza wa Jal. He is the one who implements the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal. Understand our role. Then we will really see the kind. It's not only the issue of naming our kids as Arqam, right? Or Umar, or whatsoever. Is to live by that. And then we will see the change, inshallah. So I will stop our talk today, inshallah, here with this reminder that when we are listening to these stories of the Sahabah, the purpose of that is so we correlate to our lives today and get the ibrah and understand that the things those Sahaba did, as we are required by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to follow, they are doable things. Don't ever think of the lives of Sahaba like this. Oh, they were superhuman beings. We are different people. No, and Allah, human beings are the same human beings today. The message is preserved. Allah has taken the responsibility of preserving. It's preserved. Only thing is, this message has to be instilled in our hearts and minds and translated into our actions. Jazakumullah khairan. If there is any question or comment, inshallah, I will try to entertain if I can.